Welcome to the Love Lab Podcast, a safe and fun place to get real and learn about sex. Whether you're a man or woman, single or couple, this is the show for you. I am your host, Kevin Anthony, and I am here to guide you to go from good to amazing in the bedroom and your relationships. All right, welcome back to the Love Lab Podcast. This is episode 301, and it is titled, How Sexual Dysfunction Wrecks Other Areas of Your Life and What to Do About It. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about some of the common sexual dysfunctions that people experience. And, we talk about that a lot on this show, so that's not necessarily anything new. However, we're going to be talking about how that also affects other areas of your life. And a lot of people don't realize that it's all connected because it's a conversation I have all the time. I have this conversation with clients. I have this conversation with, other professionals in the industry, and it just comes up over and over and over again. You cannot solve your sexual dysfunction without looking at other areas of your life. And the flip side of that is when you do solve your sexual dysfunction, you see other areas of your life improve. So that's what we're going to talk about today. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I have a guest with me, and she's going to help me explore this topic. But before we do that, a short word from my sponsor, Power and Mastery 3.0. Power and Mastery 3.0 is the latest version of the popular men's sexual mastery course. If you are struggling with erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, or simply want to increase your skills in the bedroom, then Power and Mastery is for you. Join the exclusive club of men who have taken their sexual performance into their own hands and become sexual masters. Mastering your sexuality is a key component to becoming the man she has always dreamt of and craves. Don't leave your sexual performance up to chance or the throw of the dice. Become a sexual master today by going to powerandmastery.com and joining the exclusive club of men who have taken their destiny into their own hands. That's powerandmastery.com. So you can learn a lot about the things we're going to talk about today in that course if you are wanting more of the home study approach. And we'll talk about, getting help throughout the show as well. Okay, my guest today is, I hope I didn't ask you how to pronounce this, but hopefully I'm going to get it right. Sureya Leonara is a holistic...
Leonara.
All right. Is a holistic sex and relationship coach and writer. She is on a mission to change the world through healing and liberating sexuality, the seed of our creation, in a way that permeates every area of our lives, not just the bedroom. With eloquence, depth, playfulness, unconventional insight, and penetrating intuition, she catalyzes profound shifts in the lives of her clients and audiences. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. It's so great to be here.
So wait, tell me again how to pronounce your name so I don't screw it up throughout the rest of the show.
No worries. It's Sureya.
Sureya. All right.
Yeah.
In the circles that you and I tend to travel, Sureya is a very common either name or pronunciation. So I just took an assumption there. So
No
thank you.
worries at all.
So as you heard when I was reading the bio, there's a lot of people, and I have a lot of them on the show, who do similar work to what I do. But one of the things I thought was interesting about Sureya and the way that she works is that you notice in her bio, she says, liberating sexuality in a way that permeates every area of our lives. And that's what we really wanted to talk about today. It's like how this can really, permeate, great word, all the other ways that you live life and how that can improve those. All right, so I'm curious. I always like to lay a little foundation here. So my first question is, from your experience, you work with a lot of clients, and from your experience, do you see that your clients' sexual dysfunctions come more from physical issues or mental, emotional, psychological issues?
Almost always the latter. I find it's very rarely actually a physical issue. And even if it is, I often find that physical issues start somewhere mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and then manifest physically last. And so, if we can kind of unpack where that began within the emotional body, and we can create shifts within our lifestyle, our way of thinking, a lot of times that will even help the physical problem self-correct. And I've had that happen in my own life as well as with many clients.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the reason why I asked that question is because I was just really curious, to hear another, a colleague, a professional's take on it. Like, is that something you see in your practice as well? My wife, when she was live and doing this work, that's was her experience. That's been my experience as well. I always start, when I have a male client coming to me and he's experiencing, something like, say, erectile dysfunction, I always have to say, especially if they're older, I always have to say, go to your doctor, have them run all the usual tests, because we know that erectile dysfunction can potentially be a sign of, circulatory system heart problems, right? So older client comes to you, is like, I can't get it up, what's going on? I say, okay, have you been to your doctor? Have you had that checked out? I would say the majority of the people that come to me in that space have already been to their doctors. And,
Mhm.
and the doctors say, we can't find anything wrong with you. Some
Here's
of
some
them,
Viagra.
right, yeah, yeah, here's some
Yeah.
Viagra, exactly. Um, some of them haven't been, and I can tell you, every client I've had that I've said, okay, please go do this, just let's get it out of the way so we can rule that out as a potential problem. Not a single one of them has come back to me and said, you know what, they figured it out, it was a physical issue. Not a
Mhm.
single one. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because I know, there are men out there with those problems, but I'm just totally agreeing with you that mostly what I see is it is a mental, emotional, basically psychological issue. But what's beautiful about that is we know how to work with that, right? So
Yes.
we know how to solve those issues, and they don't require complex surgeries or medications for the rest of your life. So that's the upside of it.
Exactly.
Okay, so that begs the question then, and then actually there's several questions here. I'm gonna ask you about a few specific sexual dysfunctions. And then I'm curious, from your experience, what types of mental, emotional, psychological issues have you seen that are underlying those specific conditions? So for instance, the
Sure.
first one, erectile dysfunction, right? What types of issues do you often see that are non-physical that show up in men who are presenting with erectile dysfunction?
That's a great question. Yeah, I really see all of these sexual quote unquote dysfunctions as ways that our body is just trying to communicate with us and bring us back into alignment. And luckily, it's usually not the case that our body is broken, but rather just talking to us. And so with erectile dysfunction, I see a handful of things come up. One of them can be if there's like a lack of financial stability or any sense of insecurity, especially as it pertains to like physical resources. Sometimes the wisdom of the body is like, hey, we're not in a place to reproduce right now, so we're not even going to risk it. And is, trying to not take on more. Sometimes it can be more related to other types of insecurities, whether that's feeling insecure in your body and your performance and in any other area of life. It can be related to trust issues. I've also seen it be connected to a fear of really standing in your masculine power. Especially, I saw a lot of this come up around the Me Too movement when there was a lot of man bashing and talk about masculine toxicity and things like this. I think that there were a lot of men that were kind of scared to stand strong in their sexual energy, and there was a lot showing up in their erection strength in that way. And I also think that the erection can mirror the strength of a man's backbone. Like if he feels like he's being walked all over, he doesn't know how to stand up for himself, he feels like he's being taken advantage of, whether that's in his relationship or at work or anywhere else, I think that can also show up in his erection strength. And then the other thing I'd say is, heavy porn use can often lead to this as well.
Yeah, you absolutely hit the nail on the head with that one. You covered all of the major reasons that I see.
I
I,
love
you
it.
know, if so, every one of those is absolutely a potential thing. And they are all things that I see when working with men also. If I had to pick the top two, I would say, from my experience, it would be performance anxiety.
Mhm.
That would be one of the top two. And the other one is, and this one might be sort of a combination of a few of the things that you talked about, but not feeling really like a powerful masculine man. So like I see a lot of these sort of like softy guys who are afraid to speak up kind of thing. They're not really in their masculine power. I see that as being another huge thing that tends to create this. And once you start to get them more confident about who they are as a man and with their performance in the bedroom, suddenly a lot of those problems just disappear.
Absolutely.
But all of the other things that you said are absolutely there as well.
Mhm.
I mean, any kind of stress in general can cause, erectile problems if the stress is large enough. But one of the things that will stress a man the most, especially if he's the sole breadwinner, is that financial stress, which is one of the first things that you mentioned.
Mhm.
So, a lot of men, I don't think they really connect what's going on with their finances with what's going on with their penises.
Right.
But there is a connection.
Very much so.
And so this is exactly why we're having this conversation today, because I don't think a lot of people make those connections. They just think
Mhm.
sex is over here, life is over here, finances are here, job is here, whatever, and then the sex is in its own little compartment, all compartmentalized over here. And if something's not working with my sex life, it must just be something with my sex life.
Right.
Maybe.
And that it is all so interconnected, they cannot be separated.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's carry on with a few other common sexual dysfunctions. What about premature ejaculation? What do you see as underlying that often?
So, one of the big things I see here is having low capacity. And this is a great example of where this ties into other areas of life. So, having low capacity for high intensity sensation, which can be sexual pleasure, that can be conflict, that can be handling, saving, asking for, investing large amounts of money. These kinds of things all require running a lot of, having capacity to run a lot of energy through the body. And if we have low capacity within our nervous system, we can short circuit when something feels too intense. And so sometimes I see that a man with low capacity feels too much pleasure in the body, doesn't know what to do with it. The system short circuits and it spits it out through ejaculation. I also see this happen when if a man feels like the life force is being sucked out of him in some way, whether he's got a really life sucking job, he feels emasculated by his partner, whatever it is, that life force can physically be sucked out of him through the form of ejaculation, where he feels like he's not in control or at choice. I have also seen this connected to low self-worth and poor boundaries, also performance anxiety and just being really stuck in the head. And a lot of times when there's performance anxiety, men are thinking, don't come, don't come, don't come, which actually they're just thinking about coming if they're thinking about that, because the subconscious doesn't understand negatives. Or they're using something to distract themselves from coming, which then takes them out of their body and not able to track with where their energy is. And then I also see a fear of intimacy sometimes showing up as premature ejaculation, because it's very intimate to stay inside of somebody for a prolonged period of time. And that's kind of connected to the capacity, where if it's too intimate, it's too vulnerable. Sometimes the system just wants to end it right there and not stay in that space. And then also porn use can play into this as well.
Yeah. Yeah, again, just totally hit it on the head. These are all of the main reasons. I will add just one to them
Mhm.
uh, that I have seen that this is something, it's just like, you know, Celine, my wife, used to say, like, your superpower, Kevin, is being able to recognize patterns.
Mm.
And it is actually one of my superpowers. It's one of the things that actually makes me good as a coach is I just observe and I listen and I ask a lot of questions and I just see these patterns repeating and I go, "Oh, okay, there it is right there." So a pattern that I have seen that doesn't get talked about very often when it comes to premature ejaculation is that almost every client I've had who's really struggling with this, and there's varying levels of it, right? There's the guys that come in that say, I have premature ejaculation, and really they're doing okay. They really just want to be able to last longer and get into that, great sex realm. And then there's the ones who are just like can't hold it at all and are really, really struggling with it. The ones who are really struggling with it, I have noticed they have a personality quirk about them that is they're impatient. They
Mhm.
want everything right away. And so we're talking right now about how this affects the rest of your life, right? So when I'm coaching somebody and I start getting this hit that, wait a minute, I think this is part of what's happening with their premature ejaculation, I'll just start asking them other questions about other parts of their life, just totally random, seemingly random questions. But what I'm getting at is I want to see what their tolerance for like just being patient is.
Mm.
Like what happens when you're, waiting in line at a, what do you do? Just like interesting things like that, but usually based on other information that they've told me is about their life. And almost every time I start to see the pattern, they are impatient. They want everything right now. Got to have it right now. And so you were talking about, the universe doesn't understand negatives. And it's like, if you keep saying, don't come, you're hearing come, right? It's so similar with this, which is like, I want it right now. I want it right now. I want it right now. And it just manifests with an ejaculation right now, an ejaculation right now, right? It's an interesting
Yes.
pattern. If you've never really thought about that one, pay a little bit more attention as you work with clients and see if that shows up, because I'd love to hear if you see a similar pattern with your clients. But it's something that I see, and every time I've pointed it out to them, they stop for a minute and they're like, and then they go, oh my God. They're like, I never realized that.
That is a really astute observation, Kevin, and I would totally agree with that. We live in a day and age where we can snap our fingertips and just have everything delivered to our doorstep. And I think porn also conditions men to, just chase after that instant ejaculation. And there's not a reason to be cultivating any type of stamina if you're just ejaculate, if you're masturbating with the intention of a quick ejaculation. And one of the things that I will often have men do when they have this impatience and this attachment to instant gratification is to practice slowing down while they eat, really taking time to take it in with their five senses and to really enjoy it and savor it and see how long they can prolong it rather than just devouring it and scarfing it down. And I think connected to this impatience that you're speaking to is a scarcity mentality. I think a lot of times men can be operating under this very unconscious mentality, unconscious, like they're not aware of it. That, what if this is the last time I'm going to have sex, or I have to get it while I can, and not being able to really slow down and luxuriate in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. The porn really is a big one too, because it is training you to do all those other things, right?
Yep.
So let's just talking about the impatience thing, exactly what you just said, which is that, we have all this porn on demand immediately. We get this huge, dopamine hit from it immediately, and we go straight for the ejaculation. It's that instant sort of gratification thing. So it feeds into somebody that maybe already has a personality of like, I got to have everything right now. I'm super impatient if I don't get it. But also, many of the other things that you shared are absolutely true as well. Yeah, you actually gave me a bunch of them, and I was like, I wanted to pick a few of them out, but now we've gone so far down the impatience rabbit hole. I'm not remembering all of the ones that you shared, but uh, I think the important part really is if you're listening to this and you're suffering with one of these things, to be thinking about, oh, I never realized it might be this or this or this or this, right? And that's kind of the goal of this show, is to get you to think about things that maybe you didn't consider before. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be simple or easy to solve just because you've become aware of it, but the awareness really is the first step. All right, let's switch over for a moment and talk about the ladies. What about women's difficulty orgasming? What are some of the psychological, emotional, mental things that might be underneath that?
Mhm. I think a lot of women simply don't have enough time to fully come online to have their full circuit board lit up. I think a lot of times sex is more rushed than how quickly a woman's body is designed to fully awaken. I think, sometimes we can even feel really turned on and be wet and we feel like we're ready to go, but either a partner comes too soon and decides to end sex there, even though I like to look at ejaculation as a dot 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 rather than the exclamation point that just ends everything. But either sex ends sooner than they can become fully aroused, or they don't get to have enough other play and foreplay. I think also not feeling met in their heart, and or feeling disconnected on any of the levels of the upper chakras can create holes in how fully turned on and sensitive a woman can feel to pleasure. I think also rigidity in the body, trouble letting go, having a long to-do list in your head, really holding on to all these different things that need to be done. The female sexuality is so highly contextual. So even things like, oh, the kids are home and I'm worried they're going to hear us, or the house is a mess, or I feel bloated, or I haven't gotten to shower yet, or I have all these things to do later. All of these things can play into a woman not feeling like she can really soften and shift gears and let go into that space of the relaxation and surrender that's required for orgasm. I also think her connection to her partner is really important. If there's gunk in the way, that can create a lack of intimacy, which disrupts orgasm. And I also think being burnt out, just being in overdrive and feeling too wrapped up in yang energy and not having time to really soften into the yin can play into that a lot as well.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And, I really wanted to ask this question because you are a woman. Now, I
Mhm.
talk about these things all the time. I've been on numerous other people's shows who, there are women hosting and they're asking me this question. And I have like this primarily female audience that I'm speaking to. And it's like, but it's coming from, me as a man. And, I can't actually experience that in my body because I'm a man. So I love asking you that question and having you basically say the exact same thing. And I like the way that you put it, which is, she doesn't have what she needs to light up all the circuits in her circuit board. This is so huge. This is such a big component that I spend so much time teaching men is how can you turn on all of those circuits? And exactly what you just said is all those things about the long to-do list and like all that stuff is running in her head and really getting in the way of her being able to relax into her feminine or yin, as you put it.
Mhm.
So, you know, when it comes to helping men, it's like, all right, how can you help her get out of her head? How can you help maybe check off some of those things on the list, or at least create a plan so she knows that they will get done at some point in the future, right? There's lots of little things that have absolutely nothing to do with sex itself that you could do as a man to help your woman relax more and get more into her body, get more into her pleasure, access her orgasms easier, which, if she can do, will make her not only enjoy sex more, but want more sex.
Yes.
Number one complaint for men, she doesn't want sex enough, right? How can you help her want it more? Well, one
Mhm.
of the ways is to help her light up all her circuit boards, because if she's really loving it and turned on, she's going to want more of it. Which brings me to a point, actually, that it's one of those sort of tough love, hard truths that I have to tell men all the time, which is that if your woman isn't really that interested in sex, it's likely because she's not getting the kind of sex that she really likes and wants.
This is so true.
Because, like, if you've ever had great sex, anybody listening, if you've ever had great sex, like, I mean, really great sex, you want more of it. It's like having the best food you've ever had or listening to the best music you've ever heard. You're like, fuck yeah, I want more of that, right? And if you're not fuck yeah, I want more of that, then it just wasn't that good.
It's true. I think the myth that women just aren't that into sex, I think it is really connected to the fact that a lot of women have never tapped into what sex can be, and they're kind of like, wow, this is all it's cracked up to be. Like, what's everybody tripping on? But the average man comes in 30 seconds to 3 minutes, and that's not nearly enough time for a woman to experience pleasure. Especially, I mean, you need a lot of foreplay and other types of play if that's the case. But if you're going straight into intercourse, or even just 5-10 minutes of foreplay straight into 30 seconds to 3 minutes of intercourse, that's not really going to help a woman access what's possible for her. And so of course she's not going to care so much about sex. And if it feels like it's just more oriented towards a male partner, it will start to feel like a chore or an obligation. This is something I have to do for him. And then that's going to create even more of a distaste for it and create micro traumas within the yoni of, anytime that a woman is penetrated when she doesn't want to be, or before she wants to be, her system will just start to shut down more and more.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And so there's the is the man, showing up and giving her the kind of sex that would really light her
Mhm.
up and turn her on. But then you also said something else which is really true, which is that a lot of women, whether with male partners, female partners, with their own masturbation practice, have never actually experienced all that sex could be.
Mhm.
And that's sometimes why they're not super interested. So, if you are a woman listening to this and you're like, yeah, I'm not all that into sex, although I'm not sure that many women who aren't into sex would be listening to a sex, love, and relationship podcast, but just in case you are, I would simply say to you that be more open to the possibilities of what sex could be. Because if you've never gotten to that, like, holy fuck, that blew my mind, rocked my world. I don't even know where I am right now. I can't literally get up off this bed or the floor. If you've never been there, you have not experienced the possibilities of what sex could be. All right, I got one more that I want to ask you about. This is also pertaining to women, and I'm curious what you have seen with women who are experiencing painful sex.
Mm-hmm. This is a huge part of how I actually came into this work. I had lost my libido and I was experiencing pain during sex in my early 20s. And part of this was connected to a mess of chronic illness that I had. Part of it was connected to sexual trauma. Part of it was issues in my relationship. But for me, the lesson was the only way around it is through it, and to really lean in to the pain and work with it and listen to it, and ask what it's here to teach us. And in the same way that if we have a knot in our shoulder and we might massage it and offer it care and stretch it and work with it, the same thing goes for our yonis, to work with massage, to work with de-armoring and breathing into it and giving it space to soften. And for me, I was actually avoiding sex because it was painful. And I had to learn instead to lean into it very gently at a pace where I wasn't, pushing too hard, but to give space for my body to unwind and unravel. And I think that pain during sex can be connected to so many different things, to stored trauma within the system, to feeling like we're being entered too soon, which again, we might not even realize. Like, we could be wet, we could be aroused, but our full system is not turned on yet. Our yoni isn't fully open, and it just needs more time to move more slowly, to feel like we can advocate for what we need. And I think sometimes that's really hard for women, even with a really trusted partner. I think sometimes it can be hard for us to ask for what we want or feel worthy of that or know how to find the words for it. And so sometimes just asking for a different type of connection or stimulation or more time can go a long way. I think sometimes pain during sex can show up if there's distrust or a lack of safety with the partner that we're with, or even just former trauma from that being the case with a former partner and needing to build trust and safety. And then I've also seen one of the ways that physical issues I do think can play into this, if there's a pH imbalance or Things like yeast, BV, different infections can definitely play into that as well. And I've seen vaginal probiotics go a long way in just helping sort out any of that piece of it. But I've also had periods in my life where I thought that maybe pain during sex I was experiencing was connected to some sort of pH imbalance or something like that. And sure enough, just working with a de-armoring practice, working into that point of tension, it softened and released. So it's pretty incredible how much something can feel like it really is rooted physically, but it's actually a deeper stored emotion or trauma.
Yeah, and it can be very difficult to tell the difference because, one can cause the other, right? So
Yes.
the mental emotional can cause the physical. So then you think, oh, I have a physical issue, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and the reverse is true also. You can have a physical issue that then causes mental and emotional, trauma as well. So it can be very tricky to figure out which is which, especially in the case of, the painful intercourse.
Mm-hmm.
That I would say that would be one that's probably a little trickier for
Yeah.
women to figure out.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad that you covered that one because I know that this is kind of, I want to say more of like an unspoken epidemic in a sense, but like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of women actually suffer from this. And it's not something I hear too many people talking about. Like I hear people talk about it in the context of, well, when you're older and you're going through menopause and you've got the thinning of the lining of the vagina and painful sex, you don't lubricate as much. Like I hear it talked about in those contexts,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't hear it so much in the context of younger women who aren't at that stage of their life yet, but yet are actually experiencing it. So
Sure.
yeah, I had one other guest on the show. We covered it quite extensively, but that was really, that was kind of unique as far as, people talking about that a lot. It's not something I hear about a lot.
Yeah, and it can be, it can be inflammation within the tissue, and inflammation can show up a lot when it's connected to anger or a need to assert boundaries. So I think sometimes if a woman's body has just had so many boundaries overridden, even if they were, more like microaggressions of just not having enough time before she was penetrated, even by a trusted partner, it can start to flare up and kind of be the body's way of talking of like, hey, you need to assert your boundaries, you need to communicate your needs more. And again, just drawing attention to something that needs to come into alignment. And in that way, if we look at what is my body trying to tell me, and what can I learn here, and how can I be an ally to my body instead of thinking that my body is broken. That was a big thing for me, is different times in my life when I thought that my body was broken, and it was actually incredibly genius, and offering its wisdom with me, and sharing very important things with me, that at certain times I was frustrated with and didn't know how to listen to, but I've come to understand all of this as incredible wisdom of the body.
Yeah, that's really amazing. You know, this would be one of those things, and I don't know your particular story. I don't know. You mentioned that topic was one of the ways you got into doing this work.
Hmm.
I was just kind of go down the line of thinking of like this stuff can be difficult to sort out on your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you just listening to you sharing the little bit you did about your own experience, and then of course, what you've seen working with clients. I would suggest to any women listening that, obviously, do your own inner work for sure. I'm not telling you not to do that, but it's definitely worth seeking help from somebody who has experience with these types of things because they can be kind of difficult to unravel.
Absolutely. And it can be helpful to realize that you're not alone, and that these things, happen to lots of people and they're connected to other parts of our lives. I think it's very empowering when somebody, in the way that we're having this conversation today, can outline these are all the things that could be connected to this. Your body is not broken, you're not fucked, you're not doing something wrong. Like, these are invitations to look deeper, that are incredible opportunities to grow as well.
Yeah. Okay. We are a little bit more than halfway through the show, so I'm going to break for the second sponsor. And when we come back, I want to talk about. So we've basically asked questions about specific types of sexual dysfunction and what the underlying things, and then I want to talk about, maybe what you've seen with your clients on how not only they have shifted that, but how other parts of their lives have shifted as a result. So
Mhm.
we'll get to that on the other side of the break. All right, men, are you tired of falling short in the bedroom and in your relationship? Do you want your woman to respect you and crave your cock? Do you want to be the man she secretly brags about to all her friends? What if you could become this man? What if you could not only master your masculine sexuality, but also be the dream man who shows up for his woman in all the ways she desires? What if you could become so irresistible that she becomes addicted to you? If you are ready to become that man, then check out my Become the Man of Your and Her Dreams coaching program by going to kevinensling.com/go/man of her dreams. That is all one word, man of her dreams. Link is in the description as always. This is where we teach you how to show up as that powerful masculine man who shows up for her in all the ways that she desires. And that's kevinensling.com/go/man of her dreams. Okay, so we've been talking about common sexual dysfunctions, what some of the underlying mental, emotional, psychological issues underneath them are. Obviously, there's no way in one show we could talk about how do you solve all of those things. I mean, geez, that's been 300 episodes of this show to get to that point of how you solve all of this stuff. However, the main topic of this show is how solving those things can improve other areas of your life. And one of the reasons why I wanted to go into them individually and talk about the mental, emotional, psychological things is because you'll notice that if you are, let's say, suffering as a man with some sort of not feeling in your masculine power, that's not just going to affect your erections. That's most likely having effects in other areas of your life. Same thing with a woman. If you are, if you're feeling like, let's see, we were talking about painful sex, right? And there's shame or abuse under that, then that is probably also affecting other areas of your life. And that's why I wanted to really cover those things, because I wanted you to know that it's not just you can't get it up. It's not just you're not interested in sex. There's something else there. And when you understand the other possible things that could be underneath it, you start to go, oh, yeah, trauma doesn't just affect, my sex. Trauma affects all this. Disempowerment doesn't affect just my sex. It affects all these other things. So now that we understand that, and we've got some good examples of that, I'm wondering if you could share some maybe success stories. Like if you have any examples of a client where you worked on a particular type of sexual issue and then what they saw in other areas of their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have one female client who has just overgone such a complete, she's had such a complete life transformation over the past, I guess we've been working together a little over 6 months. But she had all kinds of childhood trauma, some types of sexual trauma, just feeling disconnected from her sexual energy in certain ways, feeling unsafe in it in a lot of ways. It was very hard for her she was very attracted to men that were very unsafe and dangerous, and there was a lot of crossed wiring around like what is attractive and what's actually dangerous, and finding safety and sexual attraction within the same context was very difficult for her. And so we did a lot of work unpacking childhood trauma and her relationship with her sexuality, reclaiming sexual sovereignty and tapping into a way to nourish and connect with her own sexual energy, which I think is another really important thing that we didn't quite touch on. But in terms of being able to really enjoy sex, I think having that connection with your own sexual energy and ways that you live a turned on life is very important. But she started learning how to connect with her own sexuality in really meaningful ways, how to fill her own cup and kind of be able to reclaim a sense of like, this is my sexual energy. This isn't like this doesn't belong to the person who abused me. This doesn't belong to like all of these terrible partners I've had who made me feel some kind of way about my sexuality, but this is actually my connection with the divine, my connection with my body. And this rippled out into every area of her life, where like everyone at work was saying things like, you just seem different lately, you carry yourself differently, your voice sounds different. And she would refer to herself from an earlier chapter of life in one of our sessions, and her voice would get really mousy and she'd kind of curl in on herself. And it was this sharp contrast to like how she was sitting and talking today and the ways that she carries herself. And so her ways of drawing boundaries completely shifted. She climbed higher up in her company. She actually realized she doesn't even necessarily want to be doing the work that she's doing and started tapping into a higher sense of purpose. Her whole type of person that she's attracted to changed. So whereas previously she was attracted to these men who were very unhealthy and full of red flags, she actually noticed that there was a guy who had been a friend of hers who was courting her for a long time. And she hadn't even been able to see him as attractive because it was so contrast to her trauma bonding patterns. And as she cleared this trauma, she realized like, wow, I'm actually really attracted to this guy, and he's actually really good for me and a really healthy match. And so it was wild to see how much repatterned just in her perception of men and how she went about that. So it was pretty cool to see, every area of her life start to shift, and mostly just seeing how she showed up every week, just her posture and the way she carried herself was such a marked difference.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. I'll
Mhm.
share one as well, which is I had a client, this is one of the early ones where I really recognized that pattern of impatience. And
Mm,
so there's an interesting thing that happens with people who are impatient all the time, which is
mhm,
that they tend to have a lot of anxiety. And one of the reasons is when you want something or when you want everything right away all the time, well, life just doesn't work that way. There's a lot of things that, yeah, you want it right away, but it doesn't happen. You want, the better job, or you want the more money, or you want the new house, or you want the new car, or you want the better relationship, or you want a lot, like all this stuff you want, but it doesn't all just happen right away, right? So then what happens is you get more anxious about it, right? And then you end up really, if you let it go too far, in this constant state of anxiety because you have all these wants that are never being satisfied as quickly as you actually want them to be satisfied.
that's-
And so, this is a great example of somebody coming to me with an issue of premature ejaculation. We discover this underlying pattern of impatience. We start getting him working on, like meditation and breath work and slowing down and, working on expanding his patience. And all of a sudden, this anxiety level overall in life just drops
mhm.
dramatically, which of course is also helping his sexual performance. So that's another example of, how you can solve something, in the realm of your sexuality that also
Mm,
ripples out.
I
Any
love
any
that.
other interesting ones you want to share?
Well, something I've seen in a lot of clients that has been really cool is, for a lot of men that are having issues with ED or PE, it's like they perceive entire worlds as being closed to them. Like I've worked with so many men who are like, well, I haven't even dated in years. I haven't even tried to get my foot in the door because I'm dealing with this issue. And so they've been lonely, they've been single, they've been cutting themselves off from meaningful connection because they're scared to even get to the point where they're faced with this issue. So I've seen it happen for a lot of clients where as we start moving through whatever their psychological root of that issue was, it opens up a whole new level of embodiment and confidence where they can start dating again, they can start having healthy relationships, and they can just start feeling more confident in the way that they go after other opportunities too, whether that's at work or pushing their edges to get out in the world and explore in ways that they didn't have the confidence to before. I think it just infuses them with such a different level of confidence, that when before they had that, it was holding them back on so many different levels, things that they wouldn't even attempt because there was this deep-seated insecurity just permeating every area of their life.
Yeah, I completely agree. The confidence piece is huge. It's
Mm,
amazing how much we as men tie our worth into our ability to perform sexually. We just
mm,
do. Whether that's good or not, we absolutely do. And when we can't show up in that way, that I mean, look, if you want to represent the masculine from a nature perspective, it's all about the penis. I mean, the symbol for masculine is even like a big, circle with a penis sticking out of it, right? Like there's I'm not necessarily saying that that's all we're worth and that's all we're good for, but there is something to that
Mhm.
it is such a big part of who we are, how we see ourselves as men, that when we are not functioning in that way, it really can have a devastating impact on our confidence throughout the rest of our lives. So yeah, definitely a huge pattern that I've seen as well.
Absolutely. That's your yang directive pole. It's where you guys are wired to lead from. And so if that is, lacking confidence, that's going to ripple out into so many other areas of life. And, it is interesting. I have had clients where they're really good in business or money or some other high intensity sensation area they do have high capacity for, but then in their sex life they don't. And so what's cool about that is, I mean, everybody has areas in their life where they are more skilled at navigating high intensity sensation. And we can take that area of life and transfer the skills. Like, well, what is it that allows you to show up for your fitness practice in the way you do, or your business in the way you do, or conflict in the way you do? And how can we transfer those skills and those things that help you to how you navigate high intensity sensation in the bedroom? So whether that's anxiety or just large amounts of pleasure, these skills can often be transferred as a two-way street between the bedroom and the other areas of life. So that's a really fun thing to play with as well.
You just connected a dot in my brain that I have not thought about before.
Oh.
So, I often talk about, so you're using the term sort of capacity for high intensity, stimulation, right?
Mm.
And I have often used different terms when working with men about that, talking about, how we can sort of readjust their arousal levels, like sort of managing arousal levels is
Mm.
really the term that I call it. Is like, how do you not get overwhelmed by the arousal? How can you manage that level in a way that's sustainable?
Sure.
But because of the language that you were using, that just made my mind go in another direction, which is this. So um, I teach this stuff because it was my life long before I ever decided to teach it. Like I loved getting to, figure out how to do all this stuff and how to be good at it. And so, I have mastered that over the years. And I have a very good capacity for for either managing or dealing with a lot of like high intensity sensation. And the dot
Mm.
that got connected was this. I also, my entire life, have been an absolute adrenaline sports junkie.
Oh.
And I never made that connection before, that there might actually be a link there. So, I spent decades of my life, rock climbing around the world. I've jumped out of airplanes. I raced downhill mountain bikes. I still do a lot of this stuff, to this day,
Mm.
and I'm turning 50 in a couple of weeks. So I never thought about the fact that I have a large capacity for that sort of really intense type activity, that might also be helping me in the bedroom.
100%. Yeah, because if you're rock climbing and you're in a tight spot, if you tense your whole body and start to panic, that's not going to serve you well. So much of what allows you to engage these kinds of sports is finding that inner zen, being able to relax so that you can think clearly and move from that centered place. And it's the same thing in the bedroom. If you contract, it's going to squeeze that orgasm out. It's going to create less space in the body. When I look at building capacity, it's like creating space within the body to be with that energy, to let it move instead of clamping around it. And then you're almost squeezing it out like a kinked hose where it has nowhere to go. And so you ejaculate. And so being able to create more space for it to move from a place of choice and being able to channel and direct it. And you're doing the same thing in those extreme sports. So I think there's absolutely a link between them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, if you're not a rock climber, you may not quite get it as much, but like I used to use the example of, because I used to do what's called trad climbing. I still do a little bit, not as much as I used to. But trad climbing is short for traditional climbing. And that's where you go up a rock face and there's no bolts, there's no nothing on the rock. You're just finding the little cracks and the little places, and you're going up there and you're putting pieces of metal in there, cams, nuts, whatever. You're putting little pieces of metal in there and trusting your life that that's going to hold in that little crack you just stuck it in if you fall. And so the example I used to use all the time is like, when you're 15 feet above the last piece of gear that you put in, and you put it in, but you really didn't like it. Like, we used to call them confidence pieces, like you'd put it in because it's all you got, but you had basically almost no confidence that it was going to hold, but it was better than nothing, right? You were just like, I'd rather have something in there than nothing, but absolutely do not fall because I do not trust that that thing's actually going to catch me, right? You also have to realize too that if you're 15 feet above your last piece, so you gotta look at it this way. This point here, right, that I'm moving, if you're watching, this is where your piece is. This is your sort of fulcrum, right? When you fall, you're 15 feet above it. Now you are 15 feet below it, which is a total of at least a 30-foot fall. You've also got rope stretch in there. So, however far above your last piece you are taking a larger than 2-time fall that distance, right? So, and then, of course, you're trusting that that piece is actually going to hold you and that you're not going to bounce off the rock too hard on the way down. And so you're absolutely right. When you're in that position and you're starting to get tired and the move that you're going to make is hard and you're starting to shake, the absolute worst thing you can do is tense up.
Mhm.
You tense up, you're going to burn out and you're going to fall and it's going to be bad.
Yes.
So how do you stay calm when that adrenaline is surging through your body, and think clearly and make good decisions and get yourself out of that? Yeah, that is the sport of intense rock climbing.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, and those skills can be transferred to so many different things. And so I think that's really helpful when we can look at like, where do I know how to do this, and what is it that enables me to do that, and how can I transfer it to the areas of life that I'm struggling with doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a client recently who was really successful, business wise, but was really struggling in the bedroom,
Mm.
mostly with being able to last long enough. And so as I'm teaching him some of the practices to help him last longer, he was like I taught him a breathing practice. I taught him, what was the other one I taught him? I don't even remember off the top of my head. But anyway, in several times I was like, okay, so now we're going to do this practice. And he's like, oh, that sounds like this other practice that I do. Well, because it is. It's the same thing. And he's like, oh, I've been using that in business for years, right?
Oh,
It
I love
never,
it.
but it never occurred to him to use that in the bedroom, right? So that's kind
Hmm.
of the reverse of what we're talking about, is like he
Hmm.
was using mindfulness techniques and breathing techniques in order to be able to stay calm in, like, big business situations and make good decisions and all that. And as he put it, basically calm his nervous system down when he's in like intense business situations. And
Hmm.
it never occurred to him to do the same thing in the bedroom, right?
Sure.
So it's just, it's a reverse, but it's another example of how these things are. So like it was a light bulb that went off in his brain. And he was like, oh my God, I already know how to do this. I'm just not
Yes.
applying it in the right areas.
Yes, exactly. And I think it feels so counterintuitive sometimes. A lot of times sex makes us want to breathe really fast and heavy. And if we can slow that down, and a lot of times the muscles tense during sex as well. So it can feel counterintuitive, but yeah, it's the same thing like in a high intensity business sensation or conflict. Our typical knee jerk reaction will be to tense and to forget to breathe. And so if we can remember to slow it down and reroute that and bring the breath into it, it just opens up a lot more space in basically any situation that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we are pretty much at the end of the show. I'm wondering if you have any last advice for people when it comes to either solving their sexual dysfunction or, other, working with other areas of their life. Any last words of advice for the listeners?
Yeah, I would just say that to remember that your body is a mirror for the rest of your life, and that if something if something's not functioning in the way that you want it to be, get really curious and practice meeting your body where it is. I think we're so demanding of our bodies and we're very quick to blame them for doing something wrong, but they are so incredibly intelligent and they're always guiding us home to ourselves. And so if we can stay curious and really form an allyship with them, I think that we're going to find ourselves to be much healthier and living the types of lives that we want. So making time to slow down and listen and learn the language of your body is huge.
Yeah, absolutely great advice. Please tell the listeners where they can find more about you and the work that you do, because we threw a lot of stuff out there about what could be in the way, and we made some bold claims about how their lives can improve. But I understand that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to get to those places, and that it's not always easy to do on your own. So therefore, working with somebody like you or somebody like me is a great way for people to shortcut that and get to where they want to go faster, easier, or maybe at all where maybe they wouldn't be able to get there by themselves. So where can they find more about you?
Absolutely. You can learn more about me and my work on my website, which is sureyaleonara.com. I also have a podcast, excuse me, called Nectar, Sex, and Soul. And on my website, I have online courses. I work with people one-on-one. And if you hop on my mailing list, you'll get my free practice called Making Love with Life. And you can stay in touch for all my upcoming offerings.
Awesome. Links for that will be in the description below. Okay, I got one last question for you that I ask everybody that comes on the show, and that is, what is your best sexual talent?
Oh, my best sexual talent. I've never been asked that question before.
What?
I know. That's a great question. I would say attunement. I would say being able to really, really tune in to my lover and listen deeply, and then give and communicate from that place of deep listening.
That is a wonderful talent. It is an essential one for any woman that I'm with, that's for sure. She needs to really be in tune, just like I need to be really in tune to her as well. So that is a wonderful talent to have.
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
What is yours? Does anybody ever ask what yours is?
No, you know what? Nobody has asked. No, nobody has ever turned that question back on me. Darn, no. Yeah, I would say I'm gonna give two in this one, which is very similar. So my ability to be really present and aware during lovemaking, and then also to be able to last long enough to just ride wave after wave after wave, and while holding that and maintaining that presence throughout the entire session that we are making love. I would say those are probably my best sexual talents.
I love it. Also very important ones. I'm glad I got to be the first person to pop your cherry on that question.
Who's doing the interviewing here? No, I'm just kidding. That was actually fun.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Kevin.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I think it was really great. I think we did a really good job of exploring the topic that we wanted to cover today. And I hope that piqued people's interest and got them thinking a little bit more about, what might be underlying their issues and how their lives may be able to improve if they take the time to do the work and solve the issues.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, that's all the time that I have for this episode, and I will see you next week. I hope you liked this episode of the Love Lab podcast. If you enjoyed this show, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. And for more free, exclusive content, join me in the Passion Vault at kevinandceline.com/vault. That's kevinandceline.com/vault. Thanks for listening, and remember, as Celine used to say, you're amazing.